Welcome back, Focus Learners. Let's dive right into today's explainer, because we're doing a massive forensic teardown of some truly wild source material regarding the legendary TR-3B. And I want to hook right into the most absolutely crucial detail from the jump. The source material is adamant about this. The TR-3B is not some remote-controlled drone. No way. It's a massive 600-foot warship that requires a human crew inside it to manage its completely chaotic, impossible physics. And that brings us perfectly to this quote, which really sets the tone for everything we're looking at today. We are going to explore exactly what it takes to actually board, control, and literally just survive inside this alleged black-budget Leviathan. We're going to dig into the patents, the extreme physics, and the terrifying biological toll on the operators who are quite literally riding that razor's edge. So here's our roadmap for the breakdown. We've got 5 main areas to cover: boarding the black triangle, the hybrid propulsion engine, the liquid immersion cockpit, the closed-loop biosphere, and finally the fly-by-thought interface. Starting right off with Section 1, boarding the black triangle. Okay, so getting into a craft like this starts long before it ever sees the sky. We're talking highly restricted, subterranean launch silos, like the ones alleged to be out at the Dugby Proving Ground. And think about it. You don't just walk up a flight of folding stairs to get in. The hull has to be completely smooth to maintain radar stealth. So instead, according to audited documents like U.S. Patent 2949550, the craft uses a localized gravity elevator. It's wild. Personnel and heavy cargo are positioned right underneath the central bay. Then, the craft literally reverses the localized gravity field, and you are gently, completely, silently pulled upward into the belly of the ship, where you lock right into internal magnetic tracks. Moving on to Section 2, the hybrid propulsion engine. Right, so now we're inside, but before we can really grasp what the crew goes through, we have to understand the massive dual-system engine powering the 600-foot beast. It's a hybrid of 2 systems. Dead in the center is the MFD, the magnetic field disruptor. Picture a toroidal plasma accelerator spinning supercooled, highly pressurized mercury plasma at 60,000 RPM. That spin creates a localized torsion field that literally cancels out 89% of the craft's mass. But obviously that leaves 11% behind. So to push that remaining mass, the ship uses MHD, magnetohydrodynamic thrusters, situated at the 3 corners of the triangle. But here's the absolute kicker. How does it move so fast without making a single sound? Those corner thrusters have 0 moving parts. They use intersecting magnetic fields to violently shoot ionized gas out the back. But even more mind-blowing is a patented technology called plasma aerodynamics. The ship projects a massive electromagnetic field ahead of itself, which ionizes the air and creates this low-pressure plasma cushion. It is literally electronically parting the air before the hull even touches it. That's how this massive craft hits hypersonic speeds in terrifying silence without ever producing a sonic boom. So, why does all that mass reduction matter so much for the crew? Well, let's look at the math. If a standard fighter jet attempts a tight turn at hypersonic speeds, it might pull 50 Gs. That's an instantly lethal force for a human pilot. But because that MFD engine reduces the craft's effective mass by 89%, the physics completely change. That lethal 50 G turn, it drops to a highly manageable 5.5 Gs for the TR-3B pilot, simply because they are sitting inside that exact same mass reduction bubble. Which brings us to Section 3, the liquid immersion cockpit. Now here is where the reality of the physics gets pretty dark. The TR-3B isn't just making 50 G maneuvers. It's been tracked making instantaneous right-angle turns that generate inertial shockwaves of 100 Gs or more. Take a second to really think about the limits of human biology. Standard pneumatic G-suits worn by fighter jet pilots just squeeze the legs to force blood up into the brain. But at just 15 Gs, human internal organs begin to fatally rupture. So our source material asks the huge, glaring question: how on earth does a biological human survive a 100 G right-angle turn inside this thing? Well, the documents reveal a terrifying solution, and it's explicitly backed by U.S. Patent 4925133A. The operators don't sit in open air. Nope. They are enclosed in rigid deceleration capsules and entirely submerged in fluid. And it goes further. Their lungs are completely flooded with highly oxygenated liquid perfluorocarbons. Because liquids cannot be compressed, the extreme kinetic shockwave of a hypersonic turn passes entirely through the fluid-filled suit and the fluid-filled lungs without crushing the pilot's internal organs. They essentially become a solid, incompressible biological mass. So who exactly is floating inside this liquid environment? The ship is crewed by 3 to 4 operators known as the Systems Integration Team.
You've got the helm, who is the primary pilot visualizing the flight vector. But what's absolutely fascinating is the fourth crew member, darkly referred to as the Inquisitor. This is a biometric and coherence officer. You see, the MFD engine is so sensitive and chaotic that if the crew experiences a sudden spike of fear or panic, their biometric decoherence, meaning an erratic heartbeat or spiked brainwaves, could literally destabilize the ship's magnetic field. The Inquisitor monitors their physiology in real time to ensure absolute emotional regulation.
And honestly, they have a really good reason to be terrified. The crew is hovering just feet away from a gigawatt nuclear reactor and a spinning vortex of highly radioactive mercury plasma. To survive that, they sit behind what's called the shadow shield. It's a dense, perfectly engineered disk made of depleted uranium and boron carbide. Combined with an active magnetic deflection bubble that sweeps away charged particles, it creates a razor-thin cone of safety. If a crew member slips even an inch outside that geometric shadow, they are instantly and lethally irradiated.
All right, moving to Section 4, the closed-loop biosphere. Okay, so picture this. The operators are submerged in fluid, completely shielded from lethal radiation, and locked inside a high-pressure capsule. How do they breathe during covert missions that last for weeks? Venting exhaust or coming up for air would instantly compromise their stealth. Well, the ship uses an insane, almost alchemical recycling loop. When the pilot exhales toxic carbon dioxide, it's not vented. First, a Sabatier reactor bakes that CO2 with hydrogen to create methane and water. Then, a microwave pyrolysis unit literally blasts that methane with weaponized microwaves, cracking it right into solid carbon and hydrogen. Finally, a solid polymer electrolyzer splits the leftover water back into pure, breathable oxygen. The ship's nuclear power is continuously breaking down the pilot's toxic breath, recycling the oxygen, and literally using the leftover carbon as a fuel for the plasma thrusters.
Finally, Section 5, the fly-by-thought interface.
So our crew is securely boarded, surviving completely impossible G-forces, and breathing through a nuclear closed-loop system. But wait, if you're fully paralyzed inside a capsule filled with liquid, you definitely aren't reaching out to grab a joystick. The sources describe the control system as a gnostic interface. This is a direct biometric and telepathic link between the human operator and the flight computer. The pilot is strapped into a biometric throne, a full-body scanner designed by defense contractors that reads their heart rate, skin response, and biophoton emissions in real time. The human body effectively becomes the motherboard of the ship.
Here is how that instantaneous fly-by-thought sequence actually works, straight from the audited patents. Step 1, the pilot enters a deep, meditative state and simply visualizes the intended 3D flight vector. Step 2, a magnetoencephalography, or MEG, helmet reads the incredibly faint magnetic fields produced by the pilot's firing neurons directly through their skull. Step 3, advanced AI pattern recognition software instantly translates that raw intent into digital commands for the MFD and the plasma thrusters. The ship literally becomes an extension of the pilot's own will. But man, the biological cost of maintaining this cybernetic link is horrific. To ensure a zero-latency connection with that MEG helmet, operators have to be entirely bald. The helmet uses transcranial magnetic stimulation to feed massive amounts of telemetry data right back into the pilot's brain. Over time, this high-voltage stimulation causes physical microburns across the scalp. Insiders darkly refer to this scarring as the crown of thorns. Add to that the constant threat of severe neurological burnout from processing spherical 3D spatial data, plus chronic, low-level mercury vapor poisoning from the engine, and the operators face profound, lasting cognitive degradation. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative thought. As we audit all these mechanics, the liquid breathing, the shadow shields, the fly-by-thought helmets, we really have to ask, is humanity truly mastering this reverse-engineered technology, or is this machine mastering the human operators? The TR-3B requires human consciousness just to act as its processor, effectively turning highly trained individuals into disposable, biological components of a black-budget machine. It's a deeply sobering reality to ponder. I highly encourage you to dive deeper into these source materials yourself to fully grasp the true cost of what might be flying in the skies above us.